On today's show, we go on the local scene to talk to Stormchaser Matthew Capucci, Plymouth Poet Laureate Stephen Delbos, and talk about upcoming events and resources in our South Shore towns. I'm Elizabeth Shanahan-Jewett. Let's get started. A self-described storm-chasing weather nerd, Matthew Capucci fell in love with the weather and its causes as a boy growing up right here in Plymouth, Mass. Now an on-air meteorologist for Fox 5 DC and a published author, we caught up with Matthew at a recent appearance at Plymouth South High School to talk about how chasing his dreams of chasing storms have charted his path to fulfillment.
I'm meteorologist Capucci, and the Center for Severe Weather Research's Doppler on Wheels, a mobile Doppler radar unit. You can see we're getting sustained winds of 90 miles per hour with gusts to 111. Again, conditions pretty rough right now. Things will get worse before they get better.
I've always wanted to be a meteorologist. I love the science, I love understanding it, but I think to be a good meteorologist, you have to be a storm chaser. There are folks who sit in their studios, sit in the office all day, they crank through charts, they put numbers in a computer, and they send off their forecast, and that's that. And to me, that's only one side of the coin. If you want to be a good meteorologist, you have to verify your forecast. You have to go out, see, did I do it right? Did I do it wrong? What did I miss? And so I go out in the field, I chase the storms. I might wake up in Oklahoma in the morning, make my forecast, and I darn well am gonna see if I got it right, if I can see a tornado in the afternoon. And plus, being there in person to witness these storms, to go through a hurricane, to go through a tornado, to go through a flash flood, makes me a better communicator to my viewers, to my followers, to my listeners, because the more I can empathize with their experience, the better I can do my job. I'm a horrible actor. I could never do, whatchamacallit, fiction TV, because I have no poker face, I can't gamble, I can't do anything. What I can do is just be myself. And we're in an era where you have a lot of robots on TV and a lot of fake people on Instagram and a lot of fakes everywhere. And I think there's something inherently refreshing about seeing a kid who likes the weather, who just is effusive and is passionate and cannot contain himself if there's a cool storm and wants to yammer about it and is always running down to the wire in terms of timing for his weather reports. And there's something refreshing about that humanity, or about someone who will go on and, if the weather's quiet, might talk about his weekend or what he had at the Waffle House, or just these little tidbits.
You might be talking about
right?
Something here.
Okay.
We'll go work on that. Matthew, where are you?
Yeah, apparently
Come
I'm supposed
in.
to walk in now. I love this, though. The whole thing's becoming like the weather studio.
Let's see it.
Weather is taking over, so...
Snap your fingers.
Come on.
Ow.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so we're 71 degrees
But
today.
we're in the
It's
way.
nice. It's warm. I mean, should we slowly saunter away? Should I join you guys on this side?
We'll exit out.
You guys can be
All
like
right.
Vanna White and just point and smile.
Okay.
We got a couple of showers this afternoon, mainly east of D.C. Not too much to worry about. See, wait, do you want the clicker?
Oh, absolutely not.
Oh, well, in any case, maybe a thunderstorm or two, mainly east of town. Eventually, 7-day forecast looking pretty good. You know, we got several days, mostly sunny conditions, temperatures in the 50s each and every day. Then Friday, some moderation. Look at next weekend, 70 to 72 degrees. It's going to be picture perfect next weekend. And I think we still got to get the choreography down, but it's nice having company doing the weather.
Yeah.
I think it's all just about being genuine. TV is about hiring personalities, not robots, but that's true about life in general. Be genuine. What I'm most proud of is not the book, is not the job, is not anything like that. It's the fact that for an event like this, all my former teachers want to come back and see me. I mean, when I saw the list of who was coming tonight, I teared up, because it shows that they care. For whatever reason, they put a little bit of themselves extra in me, and they really rooted me on, and they went out, every single one of these teachers went out of their way to help me get to wherever it is I wanted to go. It was a non-conventional path, but they cheered me on every step of the way. And the fact that they're here tonight and wanted to come back is my proudest achievement. I don't consider myself to be a TV personality. I don't consider myself to be a TV scientist. I consider myself to be a teacher who happens to work on TV and happens to work on all these other platforms, because my #1 goal isn't to just feed people numbers, feed them a weather report. It's to teach them why the weather's happening, and in doing so, if I can make them a little bit more understanding of the weather, I spoon feed them a little bit of science, make them more comfortable with science, and I give them more confidence in themselves in general. I think that's key.
That's not a great sign, though. We take Max 3. I'll show you exactly why that is. Smaller raindrops actually have a better chance of freezing more quickly on contact with sub-freezing surfaces, the reason being a higher ratio of surface area to volume. All comes down to, high school geometry. We've done this before, way back in the day. Basically, smaller droplets, more surface area, better chance of freezing more quickly. So I think that'll be an issue, especially off to our west. All told, this is not a blockbuster ice event.
The TV meteorologist is the only scientist most folks have contact with on a daily basis. And because of that, folks tend to trust us a little more. And that allows us to be a trusted messenger to give folks the science they need to know. I think the issue nowadays with how the media approaches climate change is that it's so heavily politicized in terms of politicians, in terms of the media, everybody, that the second we mention climate change, we're just trying to give folks science. And people say, hang on, you're getting political. I'll say, I haven't mentioned policy once. I'm mentioning the science. So the way I try to do it is in a non-confrontational way, in a way that doesn't walk out holding the climate change signpost. Because honestly, we're here in Massachusetts. No one in this neighborhood cares if the polar bear has about an inch more water. As horrible as that sounds, no one here really cares if the world is warming a 10th of a degree Celsius per year. They don't notice it. But they do notice that we're getting more rainfall at certain times of year. They notice more flooding. They notice tropical cyclones might be meandering a little farther north, strengthening more quickly than before. They might notice we have more boom and bust winters. Some winters where we see nothing, other winters where we get a crazy nor'easter. So they're noticing the weather's changing. And if I can say, hey, let's tie that, the local conditions that you experience on a local level, or how much more you're paying for air conditioning, or how much more you're paying this, or how your heating bill's changing, to climate change on a larger picture, suddenly that makes it more personally relevant and resonant, and that's what I try to do.
Everybody in Bowie, you got to be in shelter right now. Lowest floor, whatever building you're in, and avoid windows. Alrighty, guys, we're getting winds of 100 miles per hour. We have debris flying by right now. We are likely in it.
What I'm finding more now is, though, that it's not even just about the things on the bucket list. It's about the people who you get to see and experience those things with. The most meaningful storm chases for me have been the ones where I get to bring a friend, an adventure buddy, a colleague, whoever, to see and experience these things, to have these bizarre, silly, tribulation-filled experiences, whether that be driving down the road on one tire, or nearly hitting a moose in a cargo van, or all these random things. That's what matters the most. And so ultimately, the storm chaser, the bucket list is about me achieving my goals, but I hope to have folks with me for the ride.
Can you share recommendations for road food and food on the go while you're chasing? And what are your go-tos?
Go-tos. Okay, so the challenge is that across the plains, there aren't a ton of options. There are some towns like Salina, Kansas, for example, they have a Chili's. And I like Chili's for lunch if there's one nearby, because they have this great, you can get a soup and half a sandwich. It's wonderful. And they give you chips and salsa too, but that's pretty good. I live for Wawa and Sheetz, which are the Mid-Atlantic. It is gas station food, but my goodness, they deserve a Michelin star. And if they don't, they get a Capucci star, because honestly, they're amazing. The other thing I'd say, Waffle House. Waffle House is my church. What I mean by that, there are certain churches where you go there and they might let you in, they might not, they might whatever. But Waffle House, they let you in anytime, day or night. They don't care who you bring, who you're with, who's coming with you, what time of day, everything. They don't care how you're dressed. That's why I love Waffle House. And they have the best food around. Grilled cheese sandwich is like $3. How can you not love it?
But the creepiest part, take a look at this. The Waffle House has closed here in Port Arthur until at least Thursday, likely Friday. They say they plan to reopen on Friday if they have power, but not looking likely at this point. You can see inside, the restaurant is largely dim, the shades are drawn, and the most creepy and sobering element of all this, the ever-present Waffle House sign, a beacon of hope in the middle of the night or anytime you need them, is dark right now as the storm Laura looms.
When it comes to planning for the unexpected, you can only plan so much. And there have been times when I've said to a friend of mine, hey, we're going into a crazy storm. This is not going to be pretty. However, this winds up happening, strange things are going to happen. There will be hiccups in the road, there will be bumps in the road, there will be something wacky is going to happen. Have a sense of humor. And so 8 hours later, I'm driving down the road with this kid with one functioning tire, and the other tires are kind of not functioning. There's a palm tree partially bent in the side of the car, and he's over there freaking out. And I'm listening to the radio, drumming in the steering wheel, and giggling myself silly. Because you have to treat life like a big sitcom. It really is. Life is about the people, the memories, the characters, and the laughs exchanged. Just go through life with a good sense of humor. That's all I'd say.
Good hail falling all around us.
Get the optional insurance in the rental car. If you're driving to a hailstorm, if you're driving to a hurricane, get the optional insurance. If you're too young to rent a car, U-Haul, rent a U-Haul van. You can do that. And it comes with more optional insurance.
Oh, man! Softball-size hail coming down, guys. We have softball-size hail. Oh! Oh, son of a...
Whoops.
You can find Matthew's book, Looking Up, The True Adventures of a Storm-Chasing Weather Nerd, wherever interesting books are sold. Join the Duxbury Free Library's January 15th installment of their Sunday Arts and Culture series, featuring local mystery writer Christine Knapp. Christine combines her history as a practicing nurse midwife and love of mystery to author her series, The Modern Midwife Mysteries. This author talk will focus on her second book, released in December, entitled Murder on the Widow's Walk. Her first title, Murder at the Wedding, was published in June of last year and will also be available at this event, which runs from 2 to 4 p.m. Visit the library's website to register. Kids aged 5 through 9 are invited to a special story time with local author Stephanie Brazier, who'll be sharing her picture book, The Cam Mac Adventure Express. Setting out from Boston Harbor, Cam is a little boat with big dreams and travels on a magical journey with some help from his brother Mac. There will be a related craft time after the story reading, and it all takes place in the craft room at the Pembroke Public Library on January 25th from 4 to 5 p.m. Visit the library's website to sign up. Stephan Delbos is the first poet laureate of Plymouth, Massachusetts, whose poetry, essays, and translations have also been published internationally. We went on the local scene to visit with Stephan in his ancestral and current home here in Plymouth to learn what a poet laureate does and means to a community.
Growing up in downtown Plymouth definitely informed my artistic and literary sensibility. When I was young, the library was on North Street, the old library. And I can remember as a kid going down there with my mom, and then as soon as I was able to kind of ride my bike down there on my own, I would go down and get as many books as I could. And I remember one time I got so many books, there were far too many to carry, especially on my bike. And so I think the woman gave me a couple like plastic bags to put the books in, and I had one bag of books on each side of the handlebars, and I was trying to turn the corner onto to Main Street and fell, and the books went everywhere. And so that was an early education in the sometimes painful kind of pursuit of knowledge and literature. But beyond that, I would say just really the geography, the water, the lights, going to the beach, taking sailing lessons at the yacht club as a kid, fishing at Jenny Pond, all of those things. I didn't know it at the time, but they were creating memories and images that I would eventually write about and continue to draw from.
Dinghies and set off toward Europe. Others
I was appointed laureate in 2020. Poetry for me was a much more kind of singular and like almost a private thing that I would do kind of alone and with my ideas and memories and images, and then that private kind of process would produce a poem that was then shared with one reader at a time in a very kind of intimate exchange. The process of coming up to being appointed Poet Laureate was interesting, and it was first there was an application process that must have been in November 2019-ish, something like that, and so submitted an application, I think with some ideas, basically proposals for events and programs and things, as well as some poems that were written for the occasion. I think in the application you needed at least one poem that was addressing Plymouth and I think the 400th anniversary and things. So then they created a short list of finalists, and we had a reading at Plymouth Public Library in February 2020. And then the official appointment happened, I think, in late March, kind of April, which was right at the beginning of COVID and when everything really started kind of shutting down, which was interesting timing. But I felt that I was uniquely prepared for the role of Plymouth's first poet laureate because of the way that my writing, the books I've published, as well as my, essays and other types of literary work have combined really local interests and local history alongside a kind of international perspective and point of view. And so that's one thing I really focused on in writing poems for the 2020, for the 400th anniversary. I was really thinking about Plymouth as not just a destination for locals, but a kind of a place where people come and people also set out from. There's a really rich history of immigration in Plymouth, and it's always been a very international town. And so I think that element, thinking of it that way, somehow, struck the, somehow appealed to the selection committee, I suppose. And with the laureateship, just having the opportunity to work with different people and different groups in the community to set up poetry readings, not just of my own work, but with other local poets and regional poets, and to have the opportunity to write poems about public events like whether it was 2020, the 400, or the Moby Mats at White Horse Beach that we had a dedication for over the summer. It really has opened my eyes to the way that poetry, while it can be private, and there is something private and personal about it, there's also a very important public function that poetry plays and has always played. You see more towns around Massachusetts and around the country, cities and states, starting poet laureate programs. And I think there's a growing awareness of the role that a poet laureate can play for a community. And also I think during the pandemic, when people were cut off from arts and culture in the ways that they were used to come into contact with it, people suddenly realized how nice it is to, be able to go to a concert or a reading, or even to go to the library, and take out books and browse and things like that. So I think there's a kind of growing awareness of the importance of programs like the laureateship. The poet laureate is, the way that I think of it, kind of representing the community to the world, but also representing poetry to the community. So one thing that I've tried to do is to bring poetry to people that might not pick up a book of poetry, to make poetry an active force in the community and bring it to public spaces that maybe aren't normally associated with poetry. So it's a responsibility, I think, to the community and to the kind of history and record making, but also a responsibility to poetry itself. One thing I would really want to convey and have wanted to convey about Plymouth is the vibrance of the local scene, and the local writers and musicians and artists. And you see things like, the Waterfront Festival or just different events that happen at the Spire or other places throughout the year. There's really a lot going on for a relatively small town with regards to arts and culture. I also think that Plymouth has a very rich history that goes beyond, the Plymouth Rock and the Mayflower. And there are so many interesting stories about different people who've come through or lived here, whether it's, the comedian and civil rights activist Dick Gregory, who lived in town for 40 years or something like that. Bob Dylan and Allen Ginsberg starting the Rolling Thunder Review Tour at Memorial Hall here. And also the history of the kind of international history. One of the things I've written about is the cordage company and the way that rope was used throughout the world, and you had materials coming to Plymouth from around the world made into rope and then shipped out. And there's something about that combination of Plymouth as a very local place with it's also a very international place. And that's something that has always really appealed to me. And then as an artist or as a poet, it's really about the light and the water and the geography and the coastline. It's such a really unique place in that way that's so inspiring to me, and I think has been for many other writers and artists. So all of those things kind of, when I think about Plymouth, those are the things that I think about. I really, from the beginning, wanted to try to use technology, social media, and kind of online marketing to promote Plymouth and to promote the Laureateship and to promote local arts and culture, and also to try to connect with local businesses like Inky Hands. We did a competition at the very beginning of the Laureateship where they printed poems from the winning poets. So I think just the kind of combination of local and international outlook, as well as some of the ideas that I didn't just want to set up another open mic. I wanted to kind of have events that were unique and special. And of course, everything changed with the pandemic. And luckily, I think I was able to pivot, well. But I really wanted to bring poetry to the public in unique ways, so unique projects like the Raining Poetry, where we stenciled out the poems, on sidewalks around town, and the poems appear when it rains. Or, we've had readings in Brewster Gardens and other kind of interesting locations around town. So I think all of those things, kind of bringing something fresh, bringing poetry off the shelves, out of the books and really into the community in an active way. I think all of those things distinguished my application for the Laureateship. If I were to give advice to a future poet laureate, I would say to, try to cast as wide a net as possible. I think there are many great organizations in Plymouth and throughout Massachusetts, like the Plymouth Bay Cultural District and Mass Cultural Council. I've mentioned, working with Plymouth North and Plymouth South, with the Center for Active Living. There are so many organizations in town that are thrilled to offer any kind of, cultural programming. They're thrilled to engage with the laureate and to kind of allow their members and their kind of public communities to really reap the benefits of the laureateship, whether that's through workshops or readings and things like that. So my first piece of advice to a future poet laureate would be to try to really connect with as many people and as many organizations as possible from the very beginning, because there's so many people in Plymouth who are not only willing to help, but also in a position, to foster the arts and the creative community. I would also give advice to a future poet laureate to try to write as many poems during their tenure as possible, and to try to really make an effort to document their Plymouth. I think over time it will be really interesting to see the different poems that different laureates have written about Plymouth, and everyone's own unique approach, to what catches their eye or what events are important during their tenure. So I think that's very important as well. And I would also encourage a future poet laureate to really try to bring poetry out of the books and into the streets, as it were, and to try to make poetry an active force in the community, and to really just bring poetry to people in unique and unexpected ways.
To see more from Stephan, visit StephanDelbos.com. Help your little ones get their wiggles out with magical musical story time with Miss Sam. From 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. on Monday mornings at the Kingston Public Library, children age 0 to 3 can make some friends, hear some stories, and move to the music. Moms, dads, and caregivers can make some friends too. This series will run until February 13th. As we settle into winter, the Plymouth Public Library is hosting an event where we can plan for spring. Native New England Flora with Master Gardener Gretel Anspach will take place on January 11th from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. in the Phalo Room. Learn more about creating a paradise for pollinators and native birds with trees, shrubs, and perennials that are native to our region. Plants that have evolved in New England are easier to maintain and hardier in our temperamental climate. Gretel is a trustee of the Massachusetts Horticultural Society and a lifetime master gardener. Her 20,000 square foot food production garden has provided fresh produce to food pantries for the last 10 years. Come and benefit from her horticultural wisdom, and then go home and plan your native spring. No registration is required. This program is brought to you with federal funds provided by the Institute of Museum and Library Services and administered by the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners. The Massachusetts Registry of Motor Vehicles and the Pembroke Council on Aging are collaborating on the January 13th Lunch and Learn presentation on how to apply for a disability placard for your vehicle. Michelle Elilix of the State RMV office will be there to answer your questions and explain the process. This 11:30 a.m. event includes a lunch of chicken cordon bleu, baked potato with sour cream, vegetables, and strawberry shortcake, all for a very minimum charge. To register, call the council at 781-294-8220. On April 15, 1947, Jackie Roosevelt Robinson took the field for the Brooklyn Dodgers, ending Major League Baseball's longtime ban on black players. That transcendent moment in Brooklyn was preceded by long years of courage and resilience by myriad men and women who fought the injustice of a color barrier in America's favorite pastime, and in America that exposed a racist underbelly many didn't want to acknowledge or see. On January 12th at the Duxbury Free Library, learn about the history and pioneers who brought the barrier down and number 42 to the field in the program Black History of Baseball with Ted Reinstein. Ted is a long-standing reporter for the nation's longest-running locally produced news magazine, WCVB Boston's Chronicle, and a member of WCVB's editorial board. He'll talk about the actions of some of the known and unsung heroes in the battle for equity, from publishers, journalists, all-black military units, Pullman porters, and the legendary stars of the Negro Leagues, like Cool Papa Bell and Satchel Paige. The program will run from 7 to 8 p.m. in the Merry Room. Visit the library's website to register. And that's what's good and good to know on the local scene this week. From all of us at PAC TV, thank you for watching. We will see you next time. Thank you for watching. We are grateful for your attention. If you like what you saw, please like and subscribe to the local scene here and share everywhere. Thank you, friends.